The bed sheets. My husband had a job which took him abroad for months at a stretch. Our daughter was 5 years old at this time, and she and I would be by ourselves. Our days were generally lonely, so she began sleeping with me in bed at night. However, I noticed she'd started being too dependent on me, so I made it a point for her to sleep in her own room till her father returned. My daughter sneaked into bed again one night after she'd had a bad dream. I was harsh with her and told her she'd need to be more brave and that she couldn't keep climbing into bed whenever she was scared. In order to make it up to her, I took her out for games on the night before my husband was supposed to arrive back home. We went to the arcade, where I let her play while I kept watch on a bench nearby. By the looks of it, my daughter had made a friend, and she was showing the little boy how to throw the ball into the dunk. I thought I'd interject so she didn't intrude on the boys' game, but then felt a hand on my arm. I looked around to see a woman next to me. She had a delicate smile on her face. She seemed about 27 to 28, which was around my age, and motioned toward the children. I took it as her confirming the little boy was her son. "Let them play. It's how they'll make friends," she said. I hadn't been around someone my age in some time and instantly took to this woman. She told me about herself and began a hearty conversation. We talked for 10 minutes before I suggested getting something to eat. As I said it, I went back to look for my daughter. She wasn't there anymore. I ran my sight around the arcade. It was jam-packed with children and adults and couldn't place my daughter anywhere. Frantic, I turned to my new friend. "Do you see them? They're not there anymore." The woman didn't seem too concerned and turned her head around once before shrugging back at me. I couldn't understand how little she cared for the disappearance of her own son. "My son?" she repeated, sounding confused. That boy wasn't my son. I stared her thunderstruck. She then told me she'd been at the arcade by herself and thought to keep me company. I was too distraught to hear more of her story and circled in panic for my child, asking every person around if they'd seen a little girl roaming by herself, but no one could recall. When I returned to the bench, the woman had gone as well. I was at the point of hysteria for my daughter's disappearance when I spotted her by the door. I scooped her up into my arms. According to her, she'd been with her new friend and had accompanied him outside once it was time for him to leave. When I asked about the woman, my daughter said she'd never seen anyone that fit the description. I felt both relieved and silly. It had been my fault for taking my eye off her, and she'd been smart enough to come back to the arcade rather than wander off. Thinking my girl was braver than I'd given her credit for, we came back home and I started finding the incident funnily embarrassing instead. My daughter, though, wouldn't stop raving about her new friend, who she said was mature like a grown-up. She told me her friend had instilled into her a sense of bravery and she could now sleep in her room by herself. I was jolted awake late at night. It was just after 2 a.m. and I couldn't understand why I'd woken up. I rolled to my side for a more comfortable position when I felt a weight out onto the bed. It was at the base of the bed and shifted upward. It was my daughter. She must be afraid again, I thought. My daughter wiggled upwards further onto the bed, which was her habit, and I felt her hand on my leg. I pretended to be asleep, not wanting to baby her further. She moved up toward my face as she climbed under the covers. Now, her hand was around my waist. It was cold. I let her move closer so she could warm herself and felt her figure grasping around my shoulder. By now, she began digging her face into my shoulder as if trying to warm herself further. I gently pushed her small body slightly away to make her slow down, but then felt her push herself in violently now. She caught hold of my arm and clasped her body around it, holding onto it for a couple minutes before stemming down. However, she then came up to my hair and buried her face in it. I could hear her breathing fast. She felt so warm now. I turned toward her too groggy to open my eyes and felt her forehead. It was warm as well. She now sounded hungrier than ever, almost biting at me, and I heard something like a little growl. I forcibly placed her aside, saying her name aloud to get her to behave. "Yes, Mommy?" I heard her voice. It made my eyes pry open. I called out to her again, and her reply horrified me further. I searched my eyes through the darkness over to the door to see my daughter rubbing her eyes drowsily. She was standing there. But how could she be when I just felt her with me in bed? I felt the warm sensation of breaths again against my ear. Then, someone spoke. "What's wrong? Sleepy time over?" My insides squirmed in terror as I processed hearing the voice of a grown man next to my face and craned my neck around to see who it was. He was a very small man, small enough to be the size of my daughter. He was under the covers, next to me. In the darkness, I could only see his eyes as they popped out of his head, a maniacal look of hilarity within them. His eyes looked back at me with unquenched thirst. They were like frozen beads of blood suspended in the night. The man's unkempt hair was wild and long that reached his shoulders. He now rose from his position, the bed sheets dangling on his head. For a split second, he and I stared at each other before he opened his mouth and let an insane cackling noise leave his lungs. The man's laughter cracked the silence in the room as he stared at me with those wide, bloodshot eyes. My daughter cried from the doorway. "Mommy, that's my friend. That's my friend from the arcade. Sleepy time? Playtime? Sleepy time? Playtime?" The man cackled with wild amusement, his head bouncing on both his shoulders as he jumped on the bed like it was a trampoline. I shrieked and fell off. The man jumped forward and wildly swayed around in front of me, screaming something himself. "She gonna getcha! She gonna getcha!" He finally stopped jumping, and I saw him grope toward me. I picked my daughter up from the doorway and ran, but slammed the door shut first. The man tried to pull it open from inside, but I managed to lock it. I grabbed the keys to the front door of the apartment, but found it unlocked. The man had picked the lock to enter. I was about to shut the door when a hand on the other side of the knob held it tight. I backed into the hall with my daughter as the door slowly swung open. Through the darkness, a tall figure appeared. It set a foot out into the hall, followed by an arm reaching out through the dark, its fingers calmly gesturing me to return. "Come in. I promise we won't hurt you." It was the whisper of a woman, a high, soothing voice that sounded like an invitation for pleasure. My daughter gripped me tighter as I slowly treaded backwards. The figure treaded forward softly as the hallway light shone upon her piece by piece to reveal a nude woman. Her body was clean and silky as if she had prepared herself for the occasion. Her long, jet black hair was parted elegantly to her sides. I screamed in shock as her face registered in my mind. It was the woman I'd spoken to in the arcade. She tiptoed toward us, her fingers continually stroking backwards to invite us in. I carried my daughter and ran for the end of the hallway, where the elevator was. It was taking too long to come up, and I heard the sound of feet hitting the floor hard as my throat was caught by a strong pair of hands. I screamed for my daughter to escape. The woman pulled me in toward my apartment as I heard the banging from the door to my bedroom, the short man screaming, "She gonna getcha! She gonna getcha!" My daughter pulled my free hand, but the woman was too strong, and I was certain I would be dragged back into the dark apartment. A moment later, I was pried to freedom as several people spilled into the hallway. The woman's grip came loose and she retreated. My neighbors had rescued me. Some of them braved into the apartment and a couple minutes later returned with my assailant. We called the police, who arrived and took away the woman and the short-statured man. I was far too traumatized from the ordeal and spent the night at the police station with my daughter. They informed me the attackers were a criminal couple at large who had been wanted on counts of rape. When the woman had approached me at the arcade, she did so to distract me from the fact that my daughter had been playing with a full-grown man who had been posing as a child the whole time. My daughter had innocently told him the area we lived, thinking it was a boy she could befriend, but the couple had followed us from the arcade to our house, breaking in at night to play their sick and twisted games. After my husband returned, he quit his job to help me from my recovery from this incident. I couldn't remove the image from my head of the man in the bed with me, pretending to be my daughter so he could get close. The figure of the woman in the hallway also haunted my thoughts for months. Since then, I haven't been able to be home alone and spend time with my in-laws should my husband be away for work. My daughter has held up better than me, but she hasn't been as friendly as she once had been. I still keep convincing her not to sleep by herself. My husband insists she's old enough. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I'll ever be ready to let her go. Dear Auntie, thank you for the wonderful dollhouse. I've been having so much fun with Gutty and Guria. They're both fighting because they both want to marry Zakir. But I told them to play nice. Mommy and Daddy didn't mind you didn't send anything for them. I don't understand how anyone can be okay just getting a letter and no toys. Rala wasn't very happy getting her car set. He's always crying. I've started calling him Rotlu, a crybaby. I wanted to play cars with him so he would want to be happier, but Mummy made me go away. I think she thinks cars aren't for girls. From Zafi. Dear Auntie, I'm so excited you're coming to visit again. Daddy used to tell me you were so busy that you didn't have time to see even family, but you seem to have time for us. Thank you so much. I hope you play with me more this time than last. You were with Rala the whole time. Mummy says he likes you too much for you to stay away too long, so I told Mummy I would act like Rala. Mummy suddenly started hiding her face and told me to go away. Dear Auntie, Zakir is missing. He was there one day and gone the next. Everyone looked for him. Gutty and Guria will be so sad to find out he's gone. I was crying all morning because Mummy and Daddy didn't care Zakir was gone. I kept telling them, and they just told me I forgot where I kept him. I knew I shouldn't have told them Rala had secretly been playing with them with me the day before. Because Mummy and Daddy suddenly stopped not caring. I found Rala and Rotlu crying outside my room. He said sorry and then ran away. I didn't understand what happened. Dear Auntie, Zakir is back. I'm not very excited because Gutty and Guria aren't interested in him anymore. He was a lot more handsome when he had both his hands. Dear Auntie, I hate you. You came and didn't spend any time with me. All you did was be shut in the room with Mummy and Daddy. Now, you took Rala away from me. What will I do without him? Dear Auntie, thank you for the new toy house and dolls. After what happened with Zakir, I didn't want to look at him anymore. Gutty and Guria are missing, but I don't care. Mommy told me Rala hasn't been crying with you. I think he didn't like being Rotlu all the time. I hope he stays happy so he can come back here. I miss my brother. Dear Auntie, Mummy said for me to say sorry for Rotlu, but I don't know why I should be sorry for what happened. How could I know you would put that dead rat in your post box? Rotlu used to come and sleep in my bed before when he got scared, but Mummy said he can't now. She doesn't know I listened to her saying to Daddy that you thought he was touching you when you were sleeping. Mummy is acting crazy. She was even wondering if I might have walked to your house and been in bed for you. Daddy pointed out your house would take over an hour to walk to. I think Mummy now thinks Daddy might have been touching you instead. Anyway, sorry for Rotlu. Dear Auntie, hello from the woods. Mummy said to inform you we'll be here for the next 2 weeks. It's a lot of fun. I saw 2 butterflies and a wild cat today. Rala has been very happy. He ran into the forest and didn't come out for hours yesterday, but Daddy said it was good that he didn't. I want to go in there without Mommy Daddy too. I hope I can join Roland next. Dear Auntie, please don't tell Mommy. I know you will read this letter after I have already done it, so I want you to read it and be happy I did. I convinced Rollo to go to the creek tonight. I want to touch the river water and see more animals. I hope to get a picture for you. Breaking news, 10-year-old girl missing since yesterday night. A little girl has gone missing in the National Park woodlands since last night. The girl, along with her family consisting of her parents and twin brother, had arrived the day before for a camping trip. Details are scarce over the location where the family had set camp. The park ranger has claimed the area had been banned from entry. Authorities have the family in question. Update: missing girl's father taken into police custody. The father of the 10-year-old girl who has been missing for 2 days has been apprehended by the authorities on suspicion of foul play. The man has been unable to form a cohesive response to the intentional lawbreaking of entering prohibited premises and the timeline of his daughter's whereabouts. Breaking news: 10-year-old missing girl has been found, father released from police custody. Kowal, you must feel like I keep bothering you all the time, but I don't know what to do. Don't believe what you hear in the news. We found Zafie by the river the first day. She almost drowned, but we couldn't tell anyone because the park ranger had found us. If he'd seen Zafie, he'd have taken Rollo away. Kowal, he was with her. I don't know what happened, but I saw him outside the tent and he told me there was nothing to tell. He didn't even mention Zafie was in the river. It was like he wanted her to drown. I don't know what to do. I'm scared of my own son. Dear Auntie, I'm doing much better now, thanks. I'm sorry I don't remember what happened. I just know I fell in the lake when I wanted to take a picture for you. Rotlu, yes, he's crying again, hasn't been speaking to me as if I did something wrong. Mommy is very glad school is starting again. Dear Auntie, school is going very nice. I've made so many new friends. My new best friend is Sheena. I've already brought her home to see Mommy and Daddy. Rala has a new favorite teacher. She likes him very much too, and he's stopped crying. Dear Auntie, there's nothing to tell because Sheena is still my best friend and Ralu is still happy. Thank you for asking. Expulsion notice. This is to inform that your son, Ralu, studying in grade 5 has been expelled by immediate effect due to indecent conduct. Please clear all possessions of Ralu by the end of this week and collect his termination certificate. Thank you. Kowal, I can't contest the expulsion. His teacher caught him in her changing room while she was undressed. When I argued he might have been lost, she showed me a new picture of herself, a month-old, signed by Ralu as a gift to her. Dear Auntie, I am so sad. Sheena is not talking to me. I don't know what happened. She was always coming home and suddenly she doesn't want to. I've been getting bored having only Rotlu to play with. He doesn't do anything, all he does is cry. I wanted someone else to hang out with me. So, I brought Sheena to meet him. I don't know why she's run away. I told her before meeting Rotlu that he liked to eat dead rats in secret. Maybe she didn't believe me until she saw it for herself. Dear Auntie, it would be very nice having you here again. After Daddy fell from the stairs, he hasn't been fun at all. He was wonderful when he was playing snakes and ladders with me, but when I told him Rotlu also wanted to play, he stopped and keeps himself closed in his room. Rotlu was so careless lying on the top of stairs at night. How could have Daddy seen him? No wonder he tripped and fell. Kowal, you have no idea how badly I'm waiting for you to arrive. Just use everything they taught you in psych school and try to fix things. I'm begging you. It seems so long ago when we were little girls ourselves. Never did I think life would turn out like this. I have faith you'll help, sister. Dear Auntie, it's too bad your visit was so short. I thought we would have lots to do. Mummy said I should write to you. She said writing to dead loved ones is supposed to help my feelings. I'm sorry you died. You were so healthy when you came here. Dear Auntie, Mummy insists I write a final letter to you before we bury you, and this letter with you. They took Rotlu away today morning. Mummy didn't even want him to see your body. Daddy says we might never see Rotlu again either. They can't understand why Rotlu would hurt you, and I don't either because that's not Rotlu is like. He wasn't the type to take a scissor and jam it in your eye. But how would Mummy and Daddy know that I stole little scissor they gave us in arts and crafts and cut Rolla's tummy? That was a lot of fun, I remember, and it made Rolla quiet, didn't it? I like calling him Rotlu, so him crying was a lot of fun too. I'm glad you got to live a little longer. I thought you might have seen me when I came to your house to put that dead animal in your post box. I was so close to using the scissor on you that night. I was tired after all walking for 1 hour in the night. I look at all the rats in the garden and remember Rolu. It was so funny making him eat them. If only Sheena hadn't seen the knife in my hand and run away. I wanted to see if Rolu would have eaten her too if I made him. I'm going to miss not having my brother around. It makes me have to pretend to be nice. And that's so tiring. I hope you have nice special dreams in heaven. Think of me when you get there. Love, Sophie. 6 years later, Sophie attempted to murder her mother in her sleep. Her father had passed away 2 years prior to an unknown illness. Ralu was acquitted 7 years after his incarceration. He has refused freedom, citing that as long as his sister is still alive, he will never be safe. Ralu remains in voluntary captivity. Sophie is still at large.